Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, as part of President Park's economic innovation plan, the government will increase rental homes and offer more low-interest mortgages to stimulate the housing market, thereby boosting domestic demand. In one of his strongest condemnations of North Korea, US Secretary of State John Kerry calls the North an evil place, saying the world should be very concerned about the human rights abuses happening inside the country. Plus, in a move likely to further inflame tensions in Northeast Asia, dozens of Chinese victims of Japan's wartime forced labor and their families file suits at a Chinese court against Japanese companies for damages. Daybreak begins now.
Thanks for joining us. To all our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, February 27th here in Seoul. You're watching Daybreak, and I'm Choi Yu-sun. We begin with the president's drive to boost domestic demand by relieving the burden of housing costs on the nation's middle class. Authorities hope measures put forth on Wednesday will boost the sluggish housing market. Our Song Ji-sun starts us off.
Balancing record-breaking exports with greater domestic activities is a key economic objective of President Park Geun-hye's three-year plan. And as the first concrete step toward boosting domestic demand, the government has put together a detailed plan to reinvigorate the housing market. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok told a meeting of economy-related ministers on Wednesday that there is an urgent need to stabilize skyrocketing housing rent fees to allow consumers to spend more on other things. To control prices in Korea's traditional rental system called jeonse, the government will make sure some 500,000 new homes will be built over the next 3 years. The government will also offer low-interest loans totaling 11 trillion won, or $10 billion to new home buyers to ease their burden. It will also draw up tailored plans for people seeking to rent their home on a monthly basis. Wednesday's move came one day after President Park unveiled a three-year plan aimed at overhauling the Korean economy into a vibrant trendsetter from a fast follower.
내수 기반을 확대하기 위해서는 국민들의 소비를 짓누르고 있는 가계 부채와 전셋값 상승 문제를 최우선적으로 해결해야 합니다. 우선 가계 부채부터 확실하게 관리해 나갈 것입니다.
And to rein in the household debt issue, Seoul aims to lower households' disposable income to debt ratio by 5 percentage points by 2017. The Finance Ministry also said it would raise household income by creating new jobs, particularly for women and young people. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
And while the president has vowed to boost domestic demand in her economic plan, consumer confidence in the country edged down this month amid lingering uncertainties despite an overall improvement in economic activity. Connie Kim reports.
Korea's Consumer Sentiment Index, a gauge of consumers' overall economic outlook, living conditions, and future spending, dipped for the first time in 5 months in February. The Bank of Korea says the index came in at 108 this month, down 1 point from January when it hit an almost 3-year high. It isn't all doom and gloom, however, as the reading, which is above 100, still means that the optimists outnumber the pessimists. That said, consumers feeling less confident about the economy could raise red flags about future growth at a time when President Park is pushing to create more balance between domestic demand and exports. She stated this on Tuesday as one of the goals of her 3-year economic innovation plan.
기초가 튼튼한 경제, 역동적인 혁신 경제, 내수 수출 균형 경제 등 3대 핵심 전략을 제가 임기 내내 직접 챙기면서 강력하게 추진해서 성공적으로 이끌어 갈 것입니다.
The Bank of Korea says the lukewarm consumer sentiment is largely due to consumers not being able to feel the economic recovery in their everyday lives. The sub-index measuring medical expenses and housing expenses dropped 2 points and 1 point respectively in February.
The income growth rate has slowed down because of the increase in household debt. and the fact that our population is aging. People aren't spending as much.
In order to achieve the president's targeted economic growth of 4% by 2017, all eyes are fixed on whether the government has the right measures in place to boost flagging domestic demand. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And speaking of striking a balance between exports and domestic demand, our parliamentary correspondent Chi Myung-gil has more on detailed measures the trade minister laid out to lawmakers on Wednesday.
In an annual policy report to the Parliamentary Trade Committee on Wednesday, Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik promised to support small and medium-sized companies seeking to boost their export volume.
To help SMEs boost exports, we will increase the size of our trade finance program to more than $72 billion this year from $69 billion last year.
Yoon said the ministry will aim to lift Korea's total export volume to over $600 billion this year, up from a record high of nearly $560 billion in 2013. The ministry will also seek to increase domestic demand in order to reduce the country's reliance on exports, making the Korean economy less susceptible to the ups and downs of global markets. The government also plans to reform the country's regulatory system over the next 3 years to remove excess red tape and bolster sluggish corporate investment.
The ministry will review the current economic regulations from the ground up with the idea of removing the excess. We will also try to prevent the regulatory system from becoming overly complex.
To promote trade relations, the government will seek to conclude pending bilateral free trade agreements with China, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand as soon as possible. Lawmakers on the Trade Committee urged the government to be thorough in its assessment of what Korea has to gain and lose from the trade pacts. Implementation of the trade deals is expected to expand Korea's trade territory from 55% of the global market to 71%. Chi Myung-gil, Arirang News.
A growing number of Korean companies are increasing their investment in the U.S. state of California, and specifically in Los Angeles. Our Hwang Jie takes a look at how firms operating here and in L.A. are giving the City of Angels a boost.
A number of trucks are pouring concrete into a hole, the site of the future Wilshire Grand, a 73-story skyscraper packed with offices, retail outlets, and hotel rooms. When it opens in 2017, it will be the tallest building in the city, the 8th tallest in the United States, and the first major skyscraper built in the city in more than 20 years. The company behind the project is Hanjin Group, the Korean shipping and airline giant.
It symbolizes Korea's commitment to the region. It shows the energy and excitement that is emerging in downtown LA.
LA Mayor Eric Garcetti says the building has already given the local economy a boost.
It's a $1 billion investment in Los Angeles, creating 11,500 construction jobs. But we will have 1,750 permanent jobs when they finish their work as well. So I thank everybody who brought this day together.
And many other Korean companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and CJ are also taking part in boosting LA's local economy. According to a report by the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, Korea is ranked as one of the top sources of foreign investment in LA County. California United Terminals, a subsidiary of Hyundai Merchant Marine that operates out of the port of Los Angeles, has plans to develop a new terminal, and it has already invested tens of millions of dollars in the area.
We made direct investment in the equipment needed, and the exact amount will exceed $100 million.
Ferdinando Guerra, an economist at the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, says the free trade agreement between Korea and the U.S. is allowing even more Korean capital to flow into the city.
Increased two-way trade. As a result of that, we will also see an increase in foreign direct investment, particularly, obviously going both ways.
Barriers to investments remain, but Guerra says he expects Korean companies to pump even more money into the local economy in the coming years, given the area's huge Korean-American consumer base. Hwang Ji, Arirang News, Los Angeles.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiation.
President Park Geun-hye plans, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a...
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has called North Korea an evil place and slammed the communist state for its human rights abuses and nuclear weapons program. In an interview with American network MSNBC on Wednesday, Kerry said there was no doubt North Korea is one of the most closed and cruel places on earth. Pointing to the serious human rights violations in the North, Kerry said it required enormous focus by the world in order to hold the regime accountable and that every aspect of any law that can be applied should be applied. Kerry's comments come after a UN-mandated inquiry last week described systematic, widespread, and gross human rights violations taking place in North Korea. Korea wasn't the only nation victimized by the Japanese military during World War II. Over 39,000 Chinese nationals were forced to work in Japanese companies during the war, and over 6,000 died in the process. And on Wednesday, the victims that survived and the families of those that didn't, 37 people in all, filed a class action lawsuit against 17 of the Japanese corporations. It represents the first case in a Chinese court over the matter, and the plaintiffs are demanding an apology from the Japanese firms and about $160,000 per person in compensation. In a separate development, a Chinese professor close to government sources in Beijing says China is open to looking into using the Korean name of East Sea for the body of water between Korea and Japan. Former Japanese Prime Minister Naoto Kan has slammed the Shinzo Abe administration's plan to bring nuclear power back to Japan, accusing the government of showing no signs of self-reflection over the Fukushima disaster. Kan, as then Prime Minister, had effectively shut down the Hamaoka nuclear plant and had called for a nuclear-free Japan following the incident in 2011. Kyodo News reported Kan told a parliamentary committee on Wednesday that there were concerns Tokyo could become inhabitable when the nuclear disaster occurred. Abe's new basic energy plan, unveiled this week, will push to bring Japan's 48 commercial reactors online if they pass safety tests, and could even see the construction of new ones. The rising trend at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona appears to be waterproof gadgets. Sony blazed the trail last year by introducing the industry's very first waterproof smartphone, and followed up at this year's conference by introducing new smartphone and tablet models, both of which are waterproof. But Sony was hardly alone at this year's Congress, with Samsung Electronics, Kyocera, and Fujitsu all unveiling waterproof smartphones. Another Korean tech giant, LG Electronics, was named the most innovative device manufacturer this year, thanks to 8 new smartphone models that come with intuitive rear buttons and curved screens. To strengthen regulations on protecting personal information following a recent data leak by credit card companies here in Korea, a new privacy protection bill is moving through the National Assembly. The bill passed Wednesday by the Security and Public Administration Standing Committee would require financial institutions and other public companies to use encrypted passwords to protect resident registration numbers. The bill will now be sent to the Judiciary Committee and then to the full Assembly for a final vote. This comes after police in the city of Incheon arrested 10 people on Wednesday on charges of hacking more than 200 websites and selling the personal data of 1.7 million people. A legal battle between Korea's National Health Insurance Service and the nation's cigarette companies is set to begin sometime in March. An official from the State Health Agency, which is operated by the Health Ministry, said the details of the lawsuit were discussed at a Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday. The government institution is taking tobacco companies to court, demanding they compensate victims of smoking-related health problems. The NHIS has previously said it could be seeking up to $307 million in damages. The World Health Organization is reportedly supporting the move, even going so far as to offer the services of one of its own lawyers. Yesterday was the last Wednesday of the month, which meant it was Culture Day here in Korea. From free admissions to museums to discount tickets, there's guaranteed to be something for everyone to enjoy. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won reports.
At Seoul Arts Center on Wednesday, Korea's representative performing arts venue. Hundreds of people gathered for a free concert as part of the government-led monthly Culture Day.
The concert tickets were distributed for free online, and in just 3 hours, all 440 tickets were booked. It really reflects the great level of interest towards the program. We once again realized there is a high demand for culture from all walks of life. So we will keep coming up with good programs to meet the demand.
I came here because my sister got tickets. It is awesome that we can listen to classical music on a regular basis with commentary that makes classical music easier to understand. It was also great to meet these very talented musicians.
It is just one of many cultural performances or exhibitions provided for free or at a discount on this Culture Day across the country, the second ever. President Park Geun-hye was among those taking part. She watched an original Korean musical in support of the government initiative. The first Culture Day in January was considered a success, and even more cultural institutions have joined in on the government initiative this month.
Last month, 883 cultural institutions participated in the Culture Day initiative. This month, more than 200 other institutions notified us about their intention to join in the Culture Day. That means more than 8,000 institutions are participating and providing more cultural benefits for the people.
Discounts on movie tickets are also being offered at 3 major movie chains, CGV, Lotte, and Megabox on Wednesday evening, while major entertainment companies like CJ E&M and PMC Production are providing discounts of up to 50% to its musicals. From this month on, tickets to sporting events will also be marked down on Culture Days. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kwon So-ah. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. While tensions in Ukraine are rising, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has ordered surprise military exercises near the Ukraine border. The drills took place on Russian territory on Wednesday and are said to be nothing unusual, but the timing raises suspicion of possible military intervention in Ukraine. On the same day, thousands of pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian demonstrators gathered outside the parliament building in Simferopol, the capital of Ukraine's autonomous Crimea region, where tensions are currently much higher than in Kiev due to large populations of both ethnic groups. In the meantime, Ukraine's interim leaders will unveil a new cabinet late Wednesday local time. Syrian troops have killed at least 175 rebels in an ambush, according to Syrian state media. State news agency Sana reported Wednesday that the attack occurred at dawn south of the capital Damascus in the opposition-held area of eastern Ghouta. Most of the rebels were said to belong to one of the best organized al-Qaeda-linked groups and were mostly foreigners from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Chechnya. The British-based activist group Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported the assault too, but said 70 rebels were killed. An Egyptian court has sentenced 26 people to death for forming a terrorist group and plotting attacks on ships passing through the Suez Canal. Judges at the Cairo Criminal Court said the men were also accused of manufacturing missiles and explosives. All but one of the 26 defendants were tried in absentia. The sentencing comes a day after new Prime Minister Ibrahim Malab vowed to, quote, crush terrorism in all corners of the country.
The head of Mt. Gox, once the world's largest exchange for the virtual currency Bitcoin, has confirmed an earlier report that the company was the victim of a massive theft. Nearly 750,000 Bitcoins, worth some $350 million are said to have been stolen. Chief Executive Mark Karpeles said in a statement on Mt. Gox's website that he's in Japan working with authorities to find a solution to the recent occurrences. Mt. Gox abruptly halted all of its transactions Tuesday, raising concerns among users and prompting questions about the future of Bitcoin itself.
Well, the 2014 Sochi Winter Games are well over with, but it's still a topic of interest for many sports fans as a recent survey by Korea Gallup asked 606 people who they thought was most impressive in Sochi. The answer? No surprise here, Kim Yeon-ah. With the survey being conducted via text message, each person was asked to pick 2 athletes they were most impressed with. And at 55%, the figure queen came in first, with 88% of the people also stating that they felt the score was unfair. Meanwhile, Lee Sang-hwa, who won her second straight Olympic gold, came in close second with 52% of the votes, with short track stars Shim Seok-hee and Park Seung-hee coming in third and fourth, respectively. Now, many would agree that An Hyun-soo, or Victor An of Russia, was one of the most impressive athletes in Sochi, and thanks to his success during the Winter Games, one Russian media source stated that he started a new revolution in Russian sports. Well, according to 24smi.org, with An winning Russia's first ever medals in the short track events, he started a huge boom in Russia, as many young kids are now getting into short track. Of course, similar to how Kim Yeon-ah brought figure skating to Korea, many kids now hope to be like Victor An when it comes to short track. And now shifting gears to the AFC Champions League results, we had 2 K-League Classic teams play last night as Ulsan Hyundai Tigers dominated Western Sydney 3-1, with Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors beating Yokohama F. Marinos 3-0 thanks to 2 goals from Lee Seung-gi. And with that, over to Wednesday night's KBL action, where the Changwon LG Sakers beat the Wonju-dongbu Promi in a close game 74-73. Meanwhile, with the Seoul SK Knights taking on Jeonju KCC Aegis, let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, going into the game here, first quarter of the game, SK all over the paint dominates the KCC defense, outscoring them 25-15 before going into halftime with a 38-20 lead. KCC tries to rally back in the second half of the game, but with Aaron Haynes putting up 22 points and 14 boards, the SK Knights cruise through in this game 71-54. And let's finish things off in V-League, where the Korea Expressway beat Daejeon KGC in a 5-set match, 3-2. Meanwhile, with the Samsung Hwajae Bluefangs taking on LIG, let's take a look at the highlights. And of course, jumping right into the action here, LIG going for the upset here, but Thomas Egger is the only source of offense for LIG as he puts up 24 points. Meanwhile, with Leo Martinez putting up a game-high 30 points and Park Cha-ru adding 10 points in the game, the Bluefangs take this game with ease, 3-0. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, don't you think it will be very nice to see a bright afternoon and hang out for a while after lunch without having to worry about all those toxic dust? Well, it looks like warmth in the air will persist today, but toxic smog level will remain pretty high in the Seoul and surrounding areas. And even if the southern parts of the country received a batch of showers yesterday, the fine dust will blow in again and raise the level of fine and ultra-fine dust particles in these regions. And it's forecasted that the level will not get back to normal until this weekend, so till then, be sure to have a face mask with you at all time. But temperatures will stay on the mild side before the last cold snap or 꽃샘추위 stops by. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The morning low in Seoul is at 4, but will get up to 13, and daily high in Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will top out at 14, 16, and 15 respectively later in the day. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will climb up to 13 and Daejeon will rise to 15, while the top temperature on Mount Kumgang will jump up to 7 in the afternoon. Now that's all from me at this hour, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thank you for watching.